E. Michael Jones writes about how Jews were disproportionately in control of the 1965 Immigration Act, how they played a huge
I
part in.
don't give a shit about that.
No,
When we're
then you're
talking about
not
the wait a minute, the
listening.
1965 Immigration Act. First and foremost, the
Yes.
1965 Immigration Act was actually incredibly beneficial because it stopped profiling people on the basis of race and it gave them the ability to immigrate here based on skill. So that's actually incredibly important. Not to mention, the majority of Americans were in favor of the 1965 immigration bill,
That's
and the
not
majority of
true.
Congress were in
That's
favor
not true.
of the
The president
1965
said that it would not
Immigration
change the
Act.
national
You trying to
characteristics.
you're blaming Jews for something that was a result of literally a democratic process that every single fucking person in America agreed with.
But like what I wanted to see is what people on the left think about the Kanye situation and him teaming up with Fuentes because I've been watching a lot of the Fuentes drama streams and like making fun of AF, and it's a pretty good time. And now that he's confirmed with Kanye, it's going to be an absolute dumpster fire. So we're going to see a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm
on the
not
pipe.
in favor of it. I think that it's incredibly concerning when somebody with the level of influence and fame as Kanye is teaming up with somebody who is literally classified as a white supremacist by the U.S. Justice Department. Yeah, I think that that's pretty concerning for sure. And I
Yeah,
think that
but see,
okay, go ahead.
have you seen some of the A-log streams about Nick Fuentes?
A-log streams, what is that?
A-log is in like a term like you follow around like a lolcow. You know what a lolcow is, right?
Yeah, where you follow around lolcows.
Yeah, like and Nick Fuentes is like trying to. I don't know what his deal is because he back in the day he was like this what like white identitarian, white nationalist, whatever you could say, blah blah blah
He's
blah. But
still
like
like that though, largely. Let's be
but
real.
no, actually, if you've seen this, he's gone on like some crazy, super anti-white rants lately about how much he hates Southerners, that white people don't have good
Yeah, but
food,
does he
blah blah
not
blah
argue
blah.
that the country should remain white? Doesn't he think that there should be a like a quota or something that basically makes it so that the country needs to stay majority white?
Frankly, I don't believe anything he says because I think he just will say anything to get
To get
clout,
clicks.
and I think this is what the Kanye thing is, right? Because he knows he's basically like all the people in the AF who thought, there's like this set position of all left because they say, oh, he doesn't really believe in this stuff anymore.
Hmm.
He says one thing, believes another. Especially when it comes to the sexual dynamic. He presents as like a traditional Catholic, traditional Christian view of
But you realize the
sexual
thing is,
morality.
yeah, and even if Nick Fuentes is literally just a troll who doesn't believe a word he says, he talks to a large audience who do believe the words he says.
I have a question though, but what do you think about what happened to Kanye? Let's get into more meat and potatoes. What about I'm trying to look into what lefties think about what happened to Kanye. Do you think that was like what was your general impressions about that?
What do you mean by what happened to him with some of the brands dropping him?
Yeah, his brands being dropped, him not being able to access his bank account, things like that.
The bank account thing is always a little bit concerning to me. I do find that to be
Mhm.
pretty concerning. I mean, at the end of the day, the bank is still like technically a private company, so it's within their rights to do that. It wouldn't be within their right to take his money, of course, but it would be within their rights to no longer do business with him. But when I see stuff with the bank accounts, that definitely does seem a little bit concerning in my opinion. As far as like the brands dropping him, yeah, I think that that was completely warranted. I mean, he brought on a fuck ton of controversy. He propped up a lot of anti-Semitic myths and beliefs, and because he's so famous, everything he says is going to be picked up and it's going to get a lot of traction. And if there are companies working with him and he's talking about the Jewish media, then yeah, they're probably going to dip. They're probably not going to want to take on that liability.
So you see, like the ADL put out a hit list, and all these companies dropped him after that. And so, don't you think that shows that there is collusion? That the ADL puts out a hit list, and boom, 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 all these companies that make millions and millions of dollars off Kanye have to drop him immediately?
Well, I don't think any of them had to drop him. Are you saying the ADL put out a hit list after Kanye talked about this shit?
Yeah, they put out a message like, oh, these are the companies that work with Kanye, and we want to see them uh, get they want to see Kanye being dropped. So it's almost
Okay.
like a
Yeah, I
gangster.
don't know what's wrong with that at all.
Well, it's because see, doesn't that show you how much power the ADL has? Like the ADL, I remember
Do you
4
think
years
if the
ago.
ADL hadn't written this, that they would not have dropped Kanye?
I think they would have used another publication with like the New York Times or saying like, okay, now it's time to drop Kanye or someone like that. Someone puts out a message and then all the companies follow lockstep. Like for example, the ADL they put out that they control so much. They were with YouTube Heroes. They partnered with YouTube Heroes in moderation in YouTube, and the ADL is also instrumental in helping train police officers in the United States, for example.
Okay, so what? None of this means anything. So you realize that if the New York Times came up instead and was like, "Hey, you should drop Kanye," and then Adidas dropped Kanye, everybody would say the exact same thing. They'd say, "The Jewish
No, but
media back at it
my
again."
my point is that the ADL is basically like dictating terms to.
They're not.
Yes, they are.
No, they're not. They wrote a
They're
letter,
training
and that on top of all the
if they're training if they're training police in how to police the citizens, they're shaping the minds of
Okay,
how
well, let's
citizens
put
are
that aside
treated
because I
in
would need to
the.
look into that right now. As far as the
For
Kanye thing,
example, like
them talking
the-
about them talking about Kanye West. This is literally what happens with freedom of speech. This is the thing that happens: is Kanye has the freedom to say what he wants to say, and then other private companies that work with him have the freedom to drop him over the things he says. The ADL has the freedom to publish something condemning the companies working with Kanye. This is the result of freedom of speech. This is what happens with freedom of speech.
so but they countered this idea of freedom of speech when they go into YouTube, go into Twitter, and dictate what is allowed and what is not allowed on the internet. They're stifling free speech by getting in these social media companies and saying who and who can't be
Well, if we
on,
want to
what
get
and
super
what's not
technical,
allowed
I
to
mean,
say.
freedom of speech, as far as like what the Constitution mandates, doesn't even apply to private companies. But Kanye has a constitutional right to freedom of speech. And then private companies that work with him also have a right to not associate with him. That's under their freedom as well.
Yeah, but it's pretty funny because rappers have been saying how they don't own their own stuff for years now, and they would blame white men who controlled all this stuff. But now, as Kanye says it, and he gets dropped by everyone. It reminds
Because
me of Nick
Kanye didn't
Cannon.
say white men
It
control it.
reminds
Kanye was
well, it
specifically
reminds me of
singling out
when
Jews, which is a conspiracy theory that's been peddled for decades by neo Nazis. So, yeah, there's a huge difference there.
I don't like this equivocation that only people who are neo-Nazis believe this thing, because that's patently absurd. This idea has been well before like the 30s and 40s. Like, so it's this false equivocation is kind of ridiculous. And I've seen that you make this false equivocation all the times that if you have this certain idea, then it's like what the Nazis had, which
Wait, the
is not
Nazis
true.
believed that they were being fucked over by the Jews in power. Yeah. That's why it was Hitler called it the final solution to the Jewish question. That's what he called the Holocaust. Yeah, the idea that there's a bunch of Jews who are all colluding as some like cabal to try and enforce their agenda by weaponizing the industries that they have disproportionate control over is the Jewish question. That's the neo-Nazi belief. So I don't think that I'm in the wrong for assuming somebody that believes that is a neo-Nazi, or at least, because I never called Kanye a neo-Nazi. I said that he was upholding and promoting neo-Nazi ideals, which is true. Fuck.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, now I can hear you. What's up?
Yeah, sorry. Have you ever heard of E. Michael Jones?
No.
E. Michael Jones is this author that I'm reading right now, right? And he's a Catholic, and he talks about this. He was debating people like alt-right people and stuff like that. And he talks about he has this book. It's called the Jewish Revolutionary Spirit, and I was reading it last night, and it talks about Russia, right? So in Russia, during the first part of the 1800s, um, they were having a problem because peasants in Western Russia were dying of starvation, right?
Okay,
Are you still there?
what does this have to do with anything?
Okay. So what the Tsar did is he commissioned a report and saying, okay, what's going on? There's tons of people that are starving to death in a very agriculturally rich area, right? So he sent an official to research into what was going on, and the official said that, well, in my report, that Jewish people are selling vodka to the peasants in Russia, and the peasants are getting in extreme debt, and so they have no way to farm, and they're dying of starvation, right? And he wrote this in his report, and immediately he was slandered as anti-Semite, that he wanted to kill people, etc., etc.,
Wait, you
etc.
realize that the Elders of Zion, the protocols of the Elders of Zion, are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with that, but that doesn't pertain to this discussion, right?
That was spread out from Russia. Russia distributed that to sow anti-Semitism among the people.
But I'm not talking. It doesn't pertain to this discussion. It's just because it was in Russia doesn't pertain to
What is the
the
point then?
fact.
Somebody said something and then they were called anti-Semitic?
Yeah, hold on. Let me get it from my library.
You don't need to go to all that trouble. It's okay. Like, yeah, I understand that some people have been called anti-Semitic maybe unfairly, but I don't know what that really means. What does that have to do with anything?
Well, see, the problem is that if you there has to be. I don't like this characterization of you say any criticism can be construed as anti-Semitism or stuff like
You're
that.
straw manning now.
No, but that's the
It's
problem
not
is
any
that
criticism of Jews is now anti-Semitism. Nobody said that. Or if they did, then they'd be wrong. There's ways that you can criticize the behavior of Jews. There's ways you can criticize the behavior of white people. That's fine. I don't care. The problem is, what is Kanye's criticism? In this case, it's going DEFCON 3 on Jewish people, claiming that Jews blackball anybody that goes against their agenda, which is the JQ, and
yeah.
so
But
on.
why did he make that tweet? Why did he make that tweet first?
The DEFCON thing?
Yes. Do you know the context of that?
What DEFCON technically means?
No. Why did he make that tweet in the first place?
I don't know.
Because he wore the White Lives Matter shirt, and then he got his concerts canceled, and then that's why he wrote the tweet, because he was angry that his concerts
So
were
what?
canceled.
And also, that doesn't
Well,
even make sense because there are also white people that would have canceled his concerts. That's not Jews. And there's certainly nothing because they're Jews that is causing that decision to be made.
I disagree with you there. I think that Kanye sees that those people that blackballed him were Jewish, and that was why he said, "Oh, I'm going DEFCON 3
Wait,
on
were they
Jews."
Jewish and white?
Jews aren't white.
You don't think that there's such a thing as a white person who's also Jewish? You don't think Jews are white?
I think what you call white Jews have more European admixture.
Wait,
There's like
there's such a thing as white Jews, okay? So I want you to answer. The people that canceled his concerts, were they Jewish and white, or would they at least conventionally be recognized as being white?
Kanye said that they were Jewish. I don't know the details about the concept about people
Okay,
canceled.
because you're weaseling right now. Because you know that if you ask, or if you say yes,
How am I
that
weaseling?
they are
Please
white
please-
and they're Jewish, then I'm going to have to ask you, what is relevant to the fact that they're Jewish? Why is it that they made this decision based on them being Jewish? Why couldn't it be based on the fact they're white?
Because what Kanye said is that the people who were screwing him over were Jewish, and that's why he said he wanted DEFCON 3 on the Jewish people.
So he was just wrong about that, or he was assuming that they were screwing him over because they were Jewish?
They were screwing him over because they were upset at the White Lives Matter shirt, but Kanye said that those people that screwed him over his concerts were Jewish.
Okay, but What's the point you're trying to make? Like, I don't care what Kanye said. He's an insane
Well,
person.
okay, let me here. I got the book right here. It's called Jewish Revolutionary Spirit by E. Michael Jones, and it's volume 1. Okay, let me just read this. So here. So Dershavin, who's the official, discovered that the majority of the Jews made their living from distilling and selling vodka. Jews were no longer tax farmers, but they had a monopoly on alcohol production, which, when combined with usury, was causing drunkenness and famine among the peasants.
Okay.
And now let me skip over. So, according to a report from the administration of Belarus, the presence of Jews in the villages has a destructive effect on the economic and moral situation of the rural people because Jews ... promoted drunkenness among the locals. Now, going on further, um, it talks about what he wanted to do to help relieve the situation, which was to help Jews get more education so that they didn't have to sell vodka or the Tsar put a program in that the Jews could get into farming.
The problem there is that,
And
yeah, like, it's not so. If there were Jews disproportionately giving alcohol to the peasants and that was causing economic issues, then yeah,
Mhm.
you can talk about that. But then you also need to ask yourself, are they
No, see,
doing this? Wait. Are they doing this because they are Jewish? Or could that Jewish person be put in a different environment or a different role and do something else?
but see, this is where he addresses that the Tsar gave them tools to help them farm, but it says that they didn't want to. They write that they felt like they were above doing farm work, etc., etc. And then later on, Dershavin was demonized as a fanatical foe of the Jews. Far from preaching racial hatred, Dershavin, like Catherine the Great, thought he could reform the Jews by reorienting them towards productive
Yeah,
activity.
okay, re-educate the Jews, reform the Jews, put them towards something
Re-
productive.
I said
Come on.
reform the Jews by reorienting them to productive activity.
I don't know
So
what
if
this is. What is the point you are trying to make, my friend?
my point is that what happens is that uh, people get screwed over by Jewish people, then they react, and then you paint them as what the most cartoonish evil people in history, which is
No.
ridiculous.
Because when you get screwed over, okay, like when the industry canceled Kanye's thing, and then he just assumes that it's the Jews doing that, and then starts talking about the Jews and their agenda, alluding to the idea that Jews are a monolith who all somehow think the same. That is the problem. You can be screwed over. Why wouldn't you just say you were screwed over by the industry? Why wouldn't you just say you were screwed over by people who
This
or
is
the top executives? Why is it Jewish people? And by the way, I looked this up, and the majority of Jews are white here in America, according to Pew Research. The net amount of Jews who are white, 92%. Jews of
what
no
does that mean?
religion, 90%.
What does that mean? We're getting off topic with that. What I'm trying to say is that, for example, is that again that Jews act in a certain way, then there's a counter response, and then that counter response is painted as unjustified, out of nowhere, blah blah blah
No,
blah.
because the criticism is not unjustified. If Kanye wants to criticize the fact that he got canceled when it came to his
Yeah.
upcoming concerts, fine. But blaming Jews, that's the problem. What does this have to do with
Well,
Jews?
who canceled his concerts? Kanye
White
said it was Jewish
people,
people.
men.
Oh, now when you blame white people, there's no problem with that. But if you blame Jews, now suddenly there's a problem. I remember Epstein was talked about as a
No, the
white
question is stop.
or an
Why is he
individual
pointing out the
man,
Jews though? Why isn't he blaming men? Why isn't he blaming white people?
because he sees that the
What
people
is
who
relevant about them
control
being
that,
Jews?
because he sees that the people who control the music industry are Jewish. Def Jam Records is owned by an Israeli who promotes
So
opiate use
what?
among black people.
I don't know. Who
Well,
gives a shit? That doesn't mean it's just the Jews doing all this. Plus, people that own these massive corporations, they have a bunch of moving parts. There's a ton of people that play a role in making these decisions. It's, again, not some shadowy cabal in a smoky room of Jews all deciding to enact their agenda on people. That's the JQ. There are ways that you can make criticisms without bringing up that they're Jewish. What does that have to do with anything?
because people would who are Jewish have a certain worldview, and they enact that worldview
No, No, you are
upon like
doing that. You are literally the problem personified right here.
I'm the problem.
Yes, you're
Listen,
saying
buddy,
that Jews
have
think and
you have
act
you
a
ever
certain
read
way. No,
you
you're
ever
saying
read
that.
Culture
Shh, be
Critique?
quiet. You're saying that Jews think and act a certain way. You're treating
Yes, you
Jews
do.
like a monolith. And again, I can read you some studies if you'd like from Pew Research that finds that half of Orthodox Jews in the US say they have not much or nothing at all in common with Reform Jews. There's a bunch of disagreement among Jews. They do not all hold the same beliefs and the same ideals.
You know you're incorrect because um, if you look at their attitudes towards many things, they believe in support of Israel, support of abortion, support in gay marriage,
They're more
etc.,
liberal. They're
etc.
more they do tend to be more progressive. Who gives a shit?
Oh well, see, then you get people like Ben Shapiro who support um, Zionism and wars in the Middle East, and then you have your left-wing Jews like I don't know Sam Harris who probably still support Israel, but they're different on economics or whatever. It's still they have very minor disagreements, frankly.
I don't even know where to begin with this. I don't even know what to say at all. Like, Jews can be more likely to vote Democrat or liberal, just like black people are more likely to vote Democrat. Is it because they're black? No. Is it because they're Jewish? No. It's because Jews have been through historically a fuck ton of oppression and they can probably empathize more so with other oppressed minority groups. You're just like assuming they're all a monolith. You're doing it. That's the problem, bro.
Jews do a lot of bad things to other people
You
too,
do
you
a lot of
know.
bad things to my brain cells.
Yeah, okay.
What does it
See,
have to do
you know,
with
like
Jews?
for example, Alexander Solzhenitsyn talks about the Jewish racial hatred of Russians and how they were killing tons and tons of Russians, and in the Ukraine, where all these Russians are now in eastern Ukraine, or what else? How
Wait,
about
do you wait? Do you honestly think that my position is that Jewish people have never done anything bad?
no? I think that you think that because you don't have you yourself don't have you're more individualistic. You don't think in terms of your group identity, but then you're projecting your individualistic worldview to people who have a very strong group identity.
But you say that, but I just read you the statistics showing that there's a fuck ton of disagreement among Jews.
I haven't seen your study, and I
I'll send it
don't
to you
know if
from
it's
Pew
wrong.
Research Center if you want. 10 key findings about Jewish Americans.
Sure. But from my reading, I understand that Jews are very conscious of their identity and they use that identity to propagate certain things. Sigmund Freud, for example, was very conscious of his Jewish identity and he used that in order to propagate psychoanalysis uh, as a weapon against what he saw the Catholic Church. Same with, I forget
Okay,
whose name it was.
chill
His
out with
name
the
was
Freud stuff.
Goldstein.
Okay, just
His,
chill out with
there's,
that because Freud
no,
has
okay,
been like
well,
he's been like laughed out of town. Okay, so I don't know what the point
no,
of
but
bringing Freud
I'm
into any
making
of
a
this
point
is.
is that they have a very conscious identity, and because of their conscious identity, they use it to enact certain things. So psychoanalysis is one example. Another example is a
Wait, people can.
pornographer. I forget what
Okay,
his
wait,
first
no,
name
no.
is.
I already know what you're talking
No,
about.
no,
The pornography
please
thing. It's
finish this
irrelevant.
one.
I understand that there are
No, no, no,
groups of
no,
people
please
that
let me
have
finish.
similar identities, that share certain identities and
Let me
share
finish the
ideals.
point.
That's fine. But again, you're assuming that just because one Jew is here and another Jew is there, that they somehow agree on things. And if they are in positions of power, are working together to enact what? What are they trying to even do?
Let me finish my point. Okay, so for example, the pornographer Goldstein, he says, I'm Jewish and I hate Christ and I hate Catholics, and that's why I promote pornography. So, my point before you cut me off is that Jews have a very they understand their identity and their identity is very conscious. And so that's why they take certain positions in order to protect their identity and protect themselves, etc.
I'm
But
sorry,
you're
could you say
saying
that
that
last part
okay,
again? You said they take steps to protect themselves. What did you say before that? I missed that.
to protect so they're very conscious of their identity and so they take steps in order to protect and promulgate that identity, right?
So how are
So
they taking
again,
step? Wait, how are they protecting their identity by canceling Kanye's concert for saying white lives matter?
because they don't like this incoming white racial consciousness, and white lives matter
What
is
does this have to do with Jews or their identity?
because okay, let me explain, right? Jews love multiculturalism because they don't want to be seen as the other in societies. They were always seen as the other in Christian societies, and so they want to enact. They want to prop up certain minorities in order to attack the majority. So gay people will support.
So you're doing it. You're
sorry,
actually
Jewish
doing like
people will
the
support.
Jewish question, even to the more extreme end of things. Now you're of the
Sorry.
position that Jews are in a position of power and they are trying to flood the country with minorities to wipe out the
Did you
white.
know that Joe
Wait,
Biden's
they're trying
cabinet
to
is
wait. Do you
40%
recognize
Jewish?
that what you're saying right now is that Jews are trying to flood the country with brown people to wipe out the quote white race?
E. Michael Jones writes about how Jews were disproportionately in control of the 1965 Immigration Act, how they played a huge
I
part
don't
in.
give a shit about that.
No,
When we're
then you're
talking about
not
that, wait a
listening
minute.
to
The
me.
1965 Immigration Act, first and foremost, the
Yes.
1965 Immigration Act was actually incredibly beneficial because it stopped profiling people on the basis of race and it gave them the ability to immigrate here based on skill. So that's actually incredibly important. Not to mention, the majority of Americans were in favor of the 1965 immigration bill,
That's
and the
not
majority of
true.
Congress were in
That's
favor
not true.
of the
The president
1965
said that it would not
Immigration
change the
Act.
national
You trying to
characteristics.
blame you're blaming Jews for something that was a result of literally a democratic process that every single fucking person in America agreed with.
The president said that it would not change the character of the United States. That it would still remain like a Northern European type of population.
So,
But that's not true.
and is that the Jews' fault somehow too?
Have you ever heard of something called HIAS
Have you ever heard of this thing called therapy? I think it would do you a lot of good.
therapy? Yeah.
Goodbye. Okay, I'm not going on with that conversation any longer. What the fuck? He literally went from just, no, Nick's just a troll, hee hee hee, to, well, Nick's does have some really good points about the Jews. Oh my god. Yes, he left, thank Hunter. He didn't leave, I kicked him out of the call. Coward. Yes, I know. If I don't have a three-year-long conversation with you about the JQ and all that shit, then I'm the coward. I get it, buddy.